Hello, hello! Welcome to another episode on my YouTube channel. Today we're gonna dive deep into Open Telemetry and the Special Interest Group that the CNCF has announced last year in November 2024. And I'm really glad to have one of the authors of the announcement post on the show today. Adriel, thank you for joining.
Hey, nice to meet you.
And you're actually the first true CNCF contributor joining onto, no, not the first one, you're the second one joining on my show. The first one that I had was Carlos Santana. He contributes to the Argo City project. Maybe you know him also as well. But today we're going to talk about something that really caught my interest last year when you announced that. So let me just bring up that if I manage to get my screen share up and running, I'm going to show off the announcement that you guys had last year. And the listeners on my show know that this kept me really excited. I already mentioned this announcement, I think, twice. So this was the announcement last year in November 2024 from Dotan and from yourself, where you kind of made available that Open Telemetry is expanding into CICD observability. So I think before getting this announcement out, I am sure that there was like 500 million hours of work being put into this. So how did this kind of go into this direction? Tell us a little bit more about the history.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually Dotan about, 3-ish years ago, had opened a OTAP in the open telemetry space around the need for getting CICD observability into a state where there's a standard around it. And there was lots of great feedback on the OTAP, but it didn't go anywhere. I think we showed this off a little bit at KubeCon, where it had been open for a while with lots of comments, but it was closed. So the Open Telemetry, it's a big project, and they had also changed some things. So we tried a new approach and opened up a project. I think it was actually, the project was opened late in 2023. So it's been around for a little longer than that blog post. But we got some feedback from the community. We got some folks who wanted to be a part of it. And then once we got enough people that, put their name on it and agreed to the goal of the SIG, we were able to get in and actually start to have meetings and start to work on real tangible benefits to the Open Telemetry community.
Cool. Yeah, sounds like at least a year of work went into this, right? So if I look at the OTAP that you just mentioned, I think this is the one that you were talking about. Or was this even an earlier one? Because this one is from January 2023 or something like that.
Yep, that was the one. That was the original OTAP. I guess it had been open for about a year. Because the project itself, this got merged in.
That's a good question. When did it get merged? I think we need to go to the very bottom of this. In March 2024.
Yes. Yep. That would be it.
Cool. Yeah, and then the announcement was in November, right? So in November 2024, like a year later maybe, and this stuff got publicly announced, and there was a lot of work into that. But now we talked already about the topic. I'm always jumping into things. Before we talk too much about the topic, Adriel, why is your name on here, and what the hell do you do for living and to get your money brought into the house?
Well, I'm a principal engineer at a consulting company out in the U.S. We're a pretty engineering heavy place, and because of our engineering stuff, we enjoy doing open source, and so that's where I live. I love open source, and I fell in love with Open Telemetry after it had met some needs that I had. And so I started working in this space and starting to contribute, and then now I'm co-lead with Dotan on the CICD SIG.
Okay, cool. So first thing, that means you're not working for a vendor and you don't get anything out of this SIG, right? So
yes, correct.
That's the first thing that I love. So thank you for doing that and for investing into this, right? And second thing, what do you do as a SIG lead or as a responsible person over there? You're just here to talk, or are you actually doing real work?
No, I'm doing real work, and it's fun. It's also harsh and challenging, which is nice. But you get to do a little bit of everything. In the CICD SIG specifically, of course, helped to found it, helped to get that through the door, figure out the processes, communicate with a lot of the amazing people in Open Telemetry, which is always a joy because there's just an amazing breadth of people here in Open Telemetry. I've actually helped build several of the semantic conventions that are now inside of Open Telemetry. I've also been working on writing the specification for environment variable context propagation, and I'm co-owner and builder of the GitHub pipeline receiver over in the Open Telemetry collector repository as well.
Cool. That's the one that I think I'm going to use in my next video, which I already recorded with a friend of mine, really using that information and post-processing the information. But thank you for that intro. Now, before we dive too deep, I think a lot of people on the show still haven't seen the SIG. So maybe we can start talking a little bit about why the hell do we think that we need something like an Open Telemetry standard for CICD? What was the main driver for getting this started?
That's such a good question. So there's a lot of great information in that OTAP that Dotan originally posted. In my purview, the CICD portion is just really part of your overall SDLC, right? We know about resiliency and systems of like microservices and applications, and we know that it's fundamentally important, right? But so too is important understanding the actual building of that of that microservice and that application, and then the deployment of that. Those things are also as critical because that's really part of your supply chain. And I have a background in security, also a very nebulous topic that I enjoy. And so like understanding and being able to observe the entire flow of your SDLC from very start to finish and to customer impact, I think is really important. So we wanted to make sure, because there was a gap in the CI/CD space, we wanted to make sure that gap was filled so that you could have that end-to-end observability over your entire SDLC.
So essentially, the idea of being able to trace software that flows through your software development lifecycle SDLC from the very end, after code commit, up to the production environment. I think that's what the traditional CI/CD pipeline gives you, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So amazing, right? And this then actually also means that the information coming out of these traces or the data, the spans that are being collected, they can then be also used to calculate metrics that will help managers to put pressure on engineers, correct?
Hopefully not. Most certainly in the world, managers can do that thing, and they can do that in many different ways, but that's not what we encourage, right? Now, this is all about self-improvement and about service improvement. So a lot of this CI/CD observability falls right in line with the DORA metrics and the DORA space. And, DORA outlines right then and there on their pitfalls, like, please do not compare services and disparate services. And these are not team metrics, these are service metrics. So while there is a breadth of people in the industry that misuse those, the intent behind them are to not be misused. They're not here to observe the human portions of the systems directly or pass judgment on them. It's simply to tell you what's going on in your SDLC. So if you are a manager, please don't do that. But encourage the experimentation and encourage the joy of understanding what's going on and saying, hey, you know what? This can be better in here. Let's continuously improve.
Yeah, and I think I was poking this a little bit to ensure that we talk about that topic as well, right? The idea is really, I think, that it is important for us to understand how much time we need to push a certain change through our SDLC. This can be pipelines that run in minutes, but it can also be pipelines that run in hours or something like that, depending on what you do, right? And the more often you run a pipeline, the more important it becomes to also be able to observe and trace it and compare it, right? So if you are in a very mature shop where you deploy very frequently every few minutes, then it becomes more and more important that you know the contents of the step of your CI/CD pipeline better. And I think that's what a lot of the vendors today don't do in a very good way. At least that's the way that I look at a lot of the most mature CI/CD vendors around.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think on the just the build side, a common example that I think about is just as you're developing your service, if you have observability into what's going on the CI side, what will happen is you can see trends. And so, let's say you've been coding and you've been developing features, but over the last year, you've noticed that your build times has just slowly crept up. They started off at 5-minute builds, and now they're up to 25-minute builds, and it was a gradual increase, so you didn't really notice it, right? It wasn't like one thing that you specifically pointed to. But with CI observability, what you can do is actually detect that, and you can go back in time and you can see where, ooh, maybe there was a little increase here, and you can start to diagnose the issues so that you can bring that build time down so that you can have a better a faster response time in your CI. Because like I know for me, if I have something that builds for forever, I feel my brain just like kind of shuts down for that period of time. It's like, a build. I got to go find something else to do, which causes me to context switch. But if my build takes 2 minutes, I'm like, is it good? All right, it's good. Let's keep going on, and it helps to keep me in flow. So just from that perspective too, like a better build time and deploy time is going to keep you in flow and keep everything going on in the software delivery.
Yeah, and actually, compute is also still the most expensive thing that we have, I think, besides memory, right? But compute time for build minutes is also a very high factor of costs in your CI/CD processes, from the way that I look at things, right? So you can also then directly try to save costs with saving time, right? At least that's what I see in the way that I look at things right now.
Yeah, very good shout.
Let's look at what the hell the semantic conventions are, right? So you started a journey off with just not directly technical word, but first starting off with some definitions in the open telemetry space. And let's assume that people listening to this don't have a clue about open telemetry. So maybe we need to start off with semantic conventions. What the hell are they? How are they being used? And why are they important for vendors, right? And how they're being adopted. Maybe you can look at that quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So semantic conventions are just a way to express pieces of metadata on your telemetry, right? But in a standardized way. The way I like to usually phrase semantic conventions is they are a common language for telemetry. Uh, a microservice that does HTTP calls in and out, regardless of what it is, and you may have 10 of them, they can all be expressed in the same way based off of this standard and these attributes. So you don't have to worry about them being different microservices, because on the telemetry side, you can make decisions and analyses against a similar set of attributes across the board. That's what we've been working to do inside of the CI/CD portion. There were no standards realistically around CI/CD observability inside of Open Telemetry anyway. There have been some like different projects in the CD Foundation, like the build events stuff. I can't think of the name of it, or CD events is the name of it. But those are specifically focused on events purely. And so we wanted to make sure that telemetry holistically could have a set of standard information on there that can be expressed.
Cool. So that means that you're contributing to this documentation around open telemetry at the end, right? Which then means, if we go into details, right, we are defining spans and metrics for CI/CD as part of the semantic conventions, right? And maybe we can talk about what is the first one that you defined. Was it just a pipeline, or what is the thing that you started with, and how long did it take you to get there?
I'll pop the actual pull request
Cool.
in the chat. It took a while. I think it took about 3 months to get merged. It was a bear, and we definitely stripped out some of the things within it. So we didn't start with just one attribute, and maybe that was our downfall. But we started off with like just a fundamental little wedge of attributes that are very related and very meaningful in the CI/CD space. So we actually, before even this, we did a proposal that had a long comment history on it as well before this pull request even got opened, and that had a period of time associated with it. I'm going to quote Martin Deutz again. because he's probably one of my favorite quotes. But when you get a group of engineers together, about 30, and they talk about how to name something, you know it's going to take a while, right? Like it's not a fast process. But fortunately, the output is very good, right? Because they did talk about it at length. But we did a proposal of like what we thought these should look like, and based off of feedback, we adjusted, iterated, and the ones we started with were artifact.
Where do I start to look at those? Would that be on the issue or on the PR?
Yeah, look at the files changed. Is probably going to be your best bet. Down on that left side under attributes registry.
Oops, sorry.
You're good.
Attributes registry, CICD, these ones.
Yeah. So we did artifact, CICD, deployment, test, and VCS. Those were like the 5 different namespaces we worked to do. Now we did change, deployment already actually existed. So we changed that one to match the actual standards in OTel. And sorry to whoever was using the previous version of that. I know we broke you, but it was experimental. Anyway, when something has a long life, it kind of like naturally not becomes experimental. But these were the 5 ones that we originally worked towards.
Cool. Okay. And it took you a few weeks, if I saw that correctly, right, to get that closed, or at least, let me see.
There were 236 conversations on this pull request. And mind you, we met every week too.
Okay. In addition to that, cool. Well, yeah. Sounds like a real plan. So kind of making this a name available in May, and then May 25th, and I think then closing it, if I saw that correctly, in October, right? So that was then right before. No, when was it closed? Merged over here in July. So that's like 2 months. Well, but this is for a distributed team. It's a very good thing. Congratulations, that was fast.
Thank you.
Okay, but you've expanded from that, right? So you didn't start with only those attributes. We now have way more than that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So since you're on the Open Telemetry website, if you under that CI/CD section that you already have open, now we have specific dedicated metrics inside the CI/CD space. So you can click on that, and this will take you to some well-known metrics that you can add into your CI/CD pipelines. Things like CI/CD pipeline run duration, right? We all like our durations. We like to see our histogram buckets of duration. So we did that for CI/CD pipeline runs, and then that way you can just understand the general distribution of how your pipelines are running. And you can do various different derived calculations from these metrics as well. And then we have also been adding more recently conventions around the spans too. So how spans getting emitted from your CI/CD pipeline, how should they be expressed? What attributes should they contain on them? How should they look, and so forth? And so those have been 2 additional domains on the semantic convention side that we've been working towards as well as just adding more attributes in the registry too.
Okay, so that actually means that essentially with this definition, we are now aiming that everyone that fulfills the Open Telemetry standard implements these attributes if they are on the CI/CD and or on the VCS side, right? That means that if I have a GitHub action, or if I have, I would say, if I have I don't want to use too much vendor names. If we have a cargo pipeline running, right, then them implementing the Open Telemetry standard would mean that they have those attributes being emitted as Open Telemetry events from the pipelines that are actually running, correct?
Yes, if they adopted the standard and chose to instrument their stuff, they would have these attributes as part of that standard.
And does that mean that also the values are standardized, or is it just the attribute names?
Just the attribute names. Now, the values, there may be a set of well-known values, for example. So the CI/CD pipeline result, for example, those values are standardized, right? Because success, failure, timeout, skipped, those are well-known values, and those are how we want them to be expressed. But other ones like your pipeline name, I mean,
Yeah,
we
of
can
course.
name whatever, right? So
Of course.
it's a
Of
balance
course.
there. But
Yeah. Yeah, but maybe we need to call that portion out. Okay, and then that makes sense. That means we are defining a verbiage on how CI/CD vendors can express the same things, right? About the pipelines that are being executed. How many vendors have actually adopted this already that you're aware of?
in the version control system space, 0.
That means GitLab, GitHub, CICD, they all did not adapt it yet, correct?
With the caveat, TeamCity is actively working on adoption, as is Jenkins isn't a VCS system, but Jenkins is also actively working on adopting the conventions. So
but those are then the CI/CD conventions or the VCS metrics conventions?
They're working on adopting any convention inside of the CI/CD space. So the VCS stuff is considered within that scope of domain for CI/CD.
Okay, cool. Cool. And do you know of other vendors actively working then on adapting the CI/CD conventions as well, besides the already mentioned TeamCity and Jenkins?
Yeah, for GitLab and GitHub, no. There are long-standing issues in GitLab that are just not making progress right now. But what we've been doing as a CI/CD SIG has been developing components in the Open Telemetry collector to be able to get that information out today without them having to actually adopt it on their end.
Cool. That means maybe we can talk about one of the examples. I think the most common one is going to be the GitHub one. I guess that's the one that you're also building on. I know that I had it opened somewhere, but I can't find the link right now. Maybe you can briefly explain how that thing works, and as this is one of the code contributions that the SIG has already done, right? I think that's going to be something that people can look at as well. What's the name of the I think it's an action, right?
No, it's actually an Open Telemetry component. I sent you the link to it.
Thank you. Let me bring that one up. Then we can look at that briefly. Cool. So this is the one, I guess.
Yep. So if you've ever run the if you've ever run the Open Telemetry collector, you'll know that it provides a really vendor agnostic way to receive, process, and export telemetry to multiple backends. It's pretty standard, I think, in a lot of observability architectures. Many companies are using that Open Telemetry collector at scale in production. The scale is absolutely immense of what people are using the Open Telemetry collector for. And what we've done is created a component called the GitHub receiver, and there is a GitLab receiver that is also in development that operates in the very, very similar manner. And what this allows you to do is, one, get some metrics from your version control system, aka GitHub. It will pull down some of the VCS specific metrics that we've defined in semantic conventions. These are, by a repository basis, and these are very much like precursors to things like trunk-based development inside of the Dora space. But the other portion, which is actually my favorite portion, even though I started off at the metrics, my favorite portion is the traces, because I like to see the waterfall views of exactly how things are behaving, where things are connected, the durations of the various things. And I like to be able to derive calculations from all the things going on in my CI/CD pipeline. So that's where this receiver also has an implementation. If you change the configuration a little bit, you can just emit your GitHub events directly to the Open Telemetry collector using this receiver, and you will get traces out of all your pipelines. And they've already got attributes on there from the semantic conventions. And again, you can start to slice and dice them in any which way you want.
Cool. And this is something that in my next video I'm going to show off with Raphael, right? Raphael works for -0. They have already adopted the visualization at least. And that's what we looked at using this receiver, right? Getting the data out of GitHub. So thank you for spoiling that already. I think that's going to be a fun part, a fun session as well. So let me stop sharing. We covered semantic conventions. We covered GitHub receiver, GitLab receiver. We covered a bunch of the stuff that you guys are doing. What are things that are currently in flight that you are working on and that you think are important to mention?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've got a lot in flight. We have a backlog of quite a few things, and we are going to be tailoring that backlog and refining it over time. And we may make some adjustments. So we may hit a milestone and kind of reinvigorate and go into a phase two. Those things are kind of in flux in terms of what we're talking about doing. But right now, like our main focus is some of the core attributes that we're still missing inside of the CI/CD space, and then the environment variable context propagation specification with implementation. Those are really our like main set of things, alongside the GitLab receiver as well, getting that into a place of stability. Those are our main kind of domains of work. And the environment variable specification, I didn't really talk about it, but I'll just kind of mention it. This is already being adopted right now. I believe OpenTofu has already implemented a version of this, or they're close to implementing a version of this. So that what the key here is that we know that propagating context between microservice A and microservice B over an HTTP call, it's a well-known pattern. There's a spec that defines it. What we don't have is a spec that defines, or well, we didn't have it. Now we do have it. But what we didn't have was a spec that defined how you propagate context across processes that do not communicate over HTTP, right? So
True.
we have implemented a spec for using environment variables as the carriers for that context propagation. And now we're working on some prototypes and getting those merged into the SDKs so that this becomes a native SDK feature. That opens the door for multiple vendors to be able to just say, great, there's a spec for this. We know that we can do this. Now it becomes just an implementation detail. And they'll be able to implement more quickly. They'll be able to, for runners, for example, on GitHub or GitLab or whatever VCS, if you have a set of Kubernetes runners, well, you can start all the way at the beginning, spin up your runner, and your runner can generate a piece of context and then provide that to any processes that are running onside that runner, right? So that you can just natively emit those traces. That's what this really opens the door for. And that works not just in, pipeline scenarios, but also in just like large ETL systems or batch systems, et cetera. So we're excited for that one for sure.
That's really cool. This is this one, right? So if I look at the board, this would be a description of this one, right? Where you're actually working on right now. Yeah, that sounds really, really good. And I think that you're also trying to influence the vendors to adopt the standards that you're putting out, right? So that means you're working with TeamCity, Jenkins, GitLab. Other vendors that you're working with right now, or?
Yeah, in terms of working with, it's mainly the Jenkins folks have come to the SIG, and so they've been present, and we've had good conversation there. And then same with the TeamCity folks, and they're doing some implementation. We're still trying to get a hold of some of the other vendors, but that is definitely on the roadmap to try to help them and see what they can do and see if we can help accelerate them.
What about our friends, the hyperscalers? Are they adopting this for their implementations? Like I would call out like Azure DevOps or Code Pipeline, AWS Code Pipeline, and stuff like that. Have you talked with them as well?
I haven't talked with them, no, and so I'm not aware if they are doing any type of adoption here.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe we can help to drive some of that. Cool. So I think this is a good overview of what's currently going on and what you're working on. If we look at what's next, what do you see being excited in the next few months on this SIG? What is going to happen?
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to change our times of which we meet. So there is a poll inside of the CICD OTEL chat in the CNCF Slack channel. If you're listening to this podcast, please feel free to hop into that channel, ask questions, comments, and fill out the survey if that's something you'd like to attend. But we're going to switch times. A lot of people haven't been able to make it as of late. Life changes happen. And so we're just going to update that, see if we can find a time that's more appropriate to get a bigger crowd coming in. Now that's one. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
I know. I will link the post, the blog. No, not the blog. I will link. Sorry. Let's start. Let's do that again. I will link. I will link the poll in the show notes. So if people are interested, please to join. Please vote there. What else is coming?
Fantastic. We're going to try to get the GitLab receiver into completion, merged in, so that people can start to use that and contribute. And then we're going to try to work a little bit towards stability of those two components, the GitHub and the GitLab. Those are ongoing in the collector, so of course they can live outside of the context of the CICD SIG. They have a life of their own, so to speak. Then next, we're going to just try to get the ENV specification experimentally enabled across a few SDKs so that they can carry those things forward. Again, they'll have a life of their own afterwards. And then I think we're going to work and think about maybe doing a phase 2 implementation of the SIG, where we have some more targeted milestones on a shorter time frame, and just be very nimble and agile, so to speak, in the SIG. Yes, those things are coming. And then you may or may not hear Dotan and I speaking again at KubeCon at the end of this year. So hopefully we'll be able to do some more socialization of the CI/CD SIG and different phases that we've got going on at the end of the year.
Cool. Sounds like a plan. So if we want to get people to help and support you, what is the best starting point? The Slack channel, I would say?
Yeah, Slack channel for asynchronous communication is going to be the best place. And then, of course, anyone's welcome to look at the Open Telemetry calendar and join our meetings on Thursday mornings at 6 a.m. PST, I think.
Yeah, that's where they currently are. But as you already mentioned, they potentially are going to be moved.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that. I think this was really insightful. And I think this is what people need to understand. Why the hell did you actually launch this SIG? And what are you thinking of? And why do we want to publish and push this? And I think what I would add to your call to action is, if you're working for especially a CICD or a VCS vendor, right? Please try to read the stuff that the SIG has been working on and try to adopt it and make it available, right? And then I hope that this will be widely adopted, because as an end user, it will give me the possibility to potentially also switch between CI/CD vendors going forward, but still continue to have the same metrics and traces and then be comparable. And I think those are things that will be helpful for a lot of users as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good shout.
Adriel, anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, just please come talk to us. And, we welcome everyone to be able to communicate and figure out what's next. So we've been enjoying it. Look forward to hopefully meeting many folks here.
What are the next events where people can meet you besides KubeCon?
Besides KubeCon, the SIG meetings every Thursday. That's
okay,
mainly
in person. In person, not. That.
Yeah, I don't have any events planned in person until KubeCon. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, thanks again for coming on and taking time to record this session with me. If you're listening to this, you like this, you're interested in the Open Telemetry SIG, please join the Slack channel. And stay tuned for the next episode, where Raphael and I are actually going to look at the GitHub receiver in action and are going to present or show pipeline execution, how it's going to look like in a tool that is called Zero that adopts the Open Telemetry standard. So pretty cool. Have a great rest of your day and see you soon. Bye, Ariel.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.